Hello everyone, my name is Imran Bashir. I'm part of the product team here at Palo Alto Networks. Today we're going to talk about an exciting innovation that Palo Alto Networks is bringing in the identity space, and that'll be offered to its customer. So let's get started. So first of all, if you look at what's top of mind for network and security operators, it's really about the excessive trust in the system. So pretty much if I'm inside my corporate network and I'm connected to the network, I'm assumed to have all trust to my resources, right? And there are a number of innovations that have been done in past. For example, to solve the user fidelity, we have introduced some technology like, for example, single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, but we all know that's not enough, right? We need some more enhanced identity before granting access to user to your crown jewels. The second thing is really about device posture. So again, when a device connects to the network, do you have the right tools to check if the device is not compromised or the device is still in compliant to your network security policies? That's another thing you have to check. And the last thing on the enterprise side is pretty much what's on the network. So when these users and devices are connected to the network, are there any rogue devices? Are there any malicious devices? Are there any compromised devices which are living there, which could be a potential threat to all the existing devices that are on the network? So it's very important to understand what's on the network, get visibility, and write policies according to that. Now, if you move towards the right, we'll talk about what are the top of the mind issues in the cloud. So when we start with cloud, the first thing is really about vulnerability. Because now you're accessing, let's say, SaaS applications or an application that's living in the cloud, which is probably not owned by you if it's a public cloud, or it could be owned by you if it's a private cloud, right? But at the end, when you're accessing these applications and these resources, how do you make sure that they're not compromised? There's no vulnerability when accessing these resources. Second thing is about secure connectivity. Again, I'm trying to go to a location that is not owned by me if it's a public cloud. How securely am I connected to that destination or that application? This really calls about a secure connectivity model that needs to be established. Traditionally, you would use VPN and some other technologies, but as we all know, in SaaS application, that is not true anymore. And last but not the least, we also need to understand what's in the cloud. Now, you're spinning up your workloads. You're spinning up your servers, your mission-critical devices on these public and private clouds. And it's also important to understand that what sits in the network for those devices, right? So with these are top of the mind what's running in network administrator and most importantly, security administrator today. Now let's talk about some of the innovation that we are bringing for our customers. So now that we've talked about the top security challenges for network and security operators, let's talk about identity and how the identity is changing and what needs to be done to address those challenges. So if I get back on the whiteboard, so on the left, you'd see that these are the traditional identities that most of the customers are using today. For example, Active Directory and LDAP. And if you look at the mapping model, there used to be like WMI or security event logs, which could be easily transformed to any platform to start enforcing policies. Since these users were connecting to the network, you would always have the actual IP address of the user in your identity systems. And when that gets shared by these platforms, you could easily go and start mapping policies, right? Now, with the move to cloud identities, for example, Azure, Okta, Google IDP, and Ping Identity, and much more, what has changed is that since these are cloud-offered solution, in most cases, you won't get the actual IP address of the user. So if the user has an IP address that's sitting on the enterprise, it's probably netted at multiple levels before it gets to the IDP, right? So you won't get the concept of sharing the IP address with the user identity to these platforms to create security event policies, right? So the whole user ID concept that we have today with Palo Alto Networks. So how do we solve that, right? That's one challenge. So the way it's done is that pretty much our platforms are enabled with a solution called Cloud Identity Engine. And what that solution does is that we sit right here. So I'm going to call it Cloud Identity Engine. Now, this is also a cloud offered service, right? And what really happens is that the Cloud Identity Engine can go connect to all or any of these identity providers on the right side. And it still has the ability to go on-prem and connect with your on-prem identities, right? And pull all these users in group. So now you pretty much have one central location that is helping you to get a unified concept or a unified approach to pull all your identity across the board. Once you have that, these identities can be easily shared with the platforms that you have, whether it's Prisma Access, your hardware firewalls, your software firewalls, which are the VM series, your Cortex, or even Panorama, right? So all these platforms just need to connect to one single service, which is Cloud Identity Engine, and then pull all these users in group. Now, traditionally, you would say, yes, I could still do it today by using some kind of SAML SP model, where your platform becomes the SAML service provider. And on each platform, you would go and create these assertions and metadata exchanges with these cloud IDPs to start pulling users in the group and the attribute when the user authenticate, right? Which is very, very complex. You have to go to every platform and you have to get your own certificate and start doing all of this, which is absolutely not fun for any network administrators. So in this case, all your platforms will just naturally talk to Cloud Identity Engine, which is offered by us, Palo Alto Networks. And then you'll also consume all the user in group directly from these cloud service. The other benefit you get is that forget about these platforms becoming the service provider. Now, pretty much you have Cloud Identity Engine that becomes the service provider. So in this case, you only need to connect these cloud IDPs with our cloud service, and these firewalls are simply forwarding the authentication request to our cloud service to be authenticated, right? So that creates the whole model very, very simple and easy to deploy. Think about tomorrow you have to roll out another 20, 30, 40, 100 firewalls. You can simply connect to the network, start forwarding to the Cloud Identity Engine, and you get all your policies in place and in one single location. So huge benefit for identity plays that we're offering. And the other benefit is that this actually solves your zero trust for cloud solution, because now you're able to use identities from the cloud and write them and use them in your security policies on the platform of your choice. Another benefit is that what if somebody goes and changes a group in Azure? I add a user or I remove a user, and same thing like I would add a group and remove a group, right? In this case, we are always kept in sync with the cloud IDPs every few minutes. And the moment there's a change in any of your cloud IDP, that's automatically pushed to these platforms to enforce access, right? So another huge benefit to solve your zero trust problem for cloud. Now, what we'll do next is that we're going to talk about how the packet flows and how this actually works. So we're going to go into some more detail about what is an SP, what is an IDP, and how the packet flows from the platform all the way to our service and to the cloud IDPs. So to summarize, Cloud Identity Engine is providing a number of benefits to address your zero trust for identity or cloud identity. So first of all, we saw that it enables you to go and connect with your cloud identity providers and pull users in a group. It can also help you to migrate from your on-prem to cloud identity provider of your choice. And also, it's also offering you a hybrid model where you can connect your on-prem identities and your cloud identities at the same time and pull the user in the group of your choice from each of these identities and start using them in the policy. So next, what we'll do is that we'll talk about what's under the hood. How does this all work, the packet flows? So let's get back to the Lightboard and we'll start talking about it. So we're going to do a couple of things here. On a high level, we're going to go with SAML language. Pretty much in SAML, the user who's trying to access a resource is called user principal. So this is nothing but a user who's trying to access a resource. In this case, let's say box.com. And then the user is connected on a wireless network. The packets are going through a firewall, which could be on-prem or anywhere. And then that firewall will be talking to our cloud service, which is Cloud Identity Engine. That Cloud Identity Engine will be communicating with your cloud IDPs, just like we saw in the previous slide. We'll have all these SAML metadata, SAML assertions done on that front. And at the end, this is the resource where the user is actually trying to go and access. So let's start drawing the packet flows. First of all, the user is trying to go to box.com, right? So pretty much it's nothing but you open a browser, you type www.box.com, and then you get redirected. Now, as soon as the firewall sees the request, what it does is that the firewall intercepts the packets right here, and then it will send a redirect to the captive portal, right? So pretty much the firewall will send, let's say, a packet back to the UPN, which will be nothing but like an HTTP 302 redirect packet, which tells the browser that, hey, you need to be redirected to another website. And in this packet, you will the user would know where to be redirected, right? So firewall's telling the user back, hey, you need to come back and get back to my captive portal right here, right? This is the firewall's captive portal. So the next packet that the user will send will be a request to the captive portal, right? Now, what will happen is that since it's directing to a captive portal and the firewall is not acting as a service provider in this case, so it will just send this packet or redirect this packet to our cloud service, which is Cloud Identity Engine, right? And then you'll see that it's nothing but redirecting to CIE. Now, what happens next is that the Cloud Identity Engine will send a redirect back to the user so the user can come back and start authenticating with the IDPs. So in this case, I'll send an HTTP 302 back here to the user principal. So it'll be a HTTP 302 to redirect back to the user. And then what it does is that, and on top of the redirect, it also tells the user that, hey, you need to send me a SAML request. Okay. Now the user gets it, and then the user will start sending the package back to the request. So pretty much the user will now go straight up to the IDP. And this is where the user will start authenticating with username, password, or SSO, or MFA, or any technique you have set up on your identity provider, right? Once that is done, what the IDP does is that it actually generates back a SAML response right here, back to the user. So it'll be nothing but another dispatch on SAML assertion to the UPN. So I'll just call it like SAML assertion, that now you have authenticated, but this is the response back in terms of SAML assertion. Now, once the user gets it, the user will go and post this assertion to the Cloud Identity Engine, right here, which is the user or the user principal posting this response back to the Cloud Identity Engine. Now, once the Cloud Identity Engine gets it, what it does is that it will actually go and post back a response to the UPN. So pretty much your packet flows are done at this point. The user gets the response back from the CIE, and in the end, user will post the response to the firewall, right? And once the firewall gets it, it will allow access to this box resource. So what you saw here is that, I know it was a number of packets back and forth, but to summarize, when the user tried to access a resource or a SaaS application, in past you had to configure all these things on the firewall to be the service provider. But now that service provider functionality is moved to the CIE. So this is your service provider in the SAML language. And from the firewall perspective, you're simply forwarding these packets. That's the magic here, right? You're forwarding the packets, and all the response are coming back from the CIE back to the user. That gets posted back to the firewall, and now you have full access to the network or to the resources. So to conclude, what we learned today is that Cloud Identity Engine is solving your zero trust for identity architecture because it can easily connect with all or any of the cloud identity provider of your choice. Secondly, it's doing a real-time sync between all these identity providers and your control points, whether your control point is sitting on-prem, in the private or public cloud. It doesn't matter. Your users and groups are always in sync within a few minutes if there's a change on the cloud identity. Third, it makes it very easy to transition from your on-prem identity to your cloud identities. Or you can even run them in a hybrid model where you have access to both of these identities and leverage users and groups from both of these identities in parallel. So to find out more, visit us at paloaltonetworks.com to learn more about Cloud Identity Engine and other exciting products that we're bringing to the market. Thank you for watching.